All right, we're a little past the hour, 10 o'clock here. So let's go ahead and get going. Welcome everybody on the call to this week's version of Long's Coffee Break. We're really excited to have you here today. My name is Bobby Henderson. I'm a sales engineer here at Long. Today, we've got a really special guest. I'm really excited about this one. So with us today is Michael Gifford, president of the AGC of Colorado. Today, we're going to be kind of covering a variety of topics, but mostly just covering current update in the Colorado construction market. So today, we'll kind of do it as a loose interview style. But as always, remember at the end, we'll have some prizes. Or a prize for the lucky winner. And without further ado, Michael, I'll kind of turn it over to you here, or I guess turn it over to the both of us. But Michael, could you just start off first by introducing yourself and then also just kind of reminding us what the AGC does?
Great. Thanks, Bobby. And thanks to everyone on the Zoom meeting this morning. So AGC is a national commercial construction association, 28,000 members across the nation that are general contractors, specialty contractors, suppliers, and associate professional firms. In Colorado here, we cover the whole state for commercial building contractors, specialty contractors and suppliers, 680 members. And we focus on advocacy at the state and local level, and membership engagement, which includes committees, education, training, safety and environmental, and networking, workforce development, a full suite of programs there through our Construction Education Foundation, and then Culture of Care, our newest program area covering diversity and inclusion and well-being, mental health, and addiction services. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. And then I'll mention that there's another AGC chapter in Colorado, the Colorado Contractors Association, that covers highway contractors. And we're kind of brother and sister in this effort, serving the state. And that's what we do. So we're glad to be able to tell you a little bit about that this morning and answer more questions later if those come up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. And so I guess one of the reasons I asked you for to discuss today, obviously we've been going back and forth now for a number of months, but, the question I had was, we're facing a lot of economic challenges right now, global economy, between supply chain, inflation, that sort of thing. I guess I'm just hoping you could, just reflect on some of those challenges that we're currently facing, especially as it pertains to our Colorado construction industry.
Yeah, so I would kind of put those into two buckets, kind of more immediate in the windshield, and then longer term that's going to be more of a marathon and less of a sprint. And so in the short term, I would say are kind of the bottom of that slide, material price increases, inflation. That's been the last year, 20 to 22% inflation in the basket full of goods and services that go into a building, a new build. And that's starting to moderate. We're seeing 0% or actually a drop of 2% in the last 2 months. You still have supply chain, timing, all of those challenges. Then you also have kind of general inflation in the market. But in the long term, the consistent marathon problem is labor and employment. And so that is all within the context of what we predict is going to happen in terms of construction volume and construction demand. But certainly that's the long-term play is employment. So what we're suggesting to our members is don't forget the long-term problem while you're just focusing on the short term of construction inflation. That's kind of baked in now. We have our construction inflation report that can help you talk to owners about what's happened and what's going to happen next there. And then keep your eye on the employment issue, because that's going to be with us as long as any of us are doing construction that are on the call today.
At the end of the day, labor is our biggest problem.
It is. And I think we've got a slide in here in a minute that we might get to, but we've had a dramatic growth in employment. So we'll probably talk about that more in a minute.
Yeah. And despite all these challenges, I guess, with, labor shortages, we still keep getting lots of requests. We still see a lot of projects, hitting the streets. We still see a lot of new builds. We see a lot of cranes in the air. What's going on?
So we could talk all day about different indicators, but at the end of the day, it comes down to something very simple, the way I look at it, and it's population growth. And that's been 1.5 million in the last 2 decades. And it's specifically net in migration. So I think, and then what happens there is that in that net in migration, we've been averaging about 50,000 people a year, and a huge subset of that 50,000 plus net in migration are 25 to 34-year-olds. And those are highly coveted as employees, especially we're the second most educated state in the country. So corporate relocation follows that employment in migration, or that population in migration. So we keep seeing the need for new buildings. And then at the same time, we have deferred infrastructure demand. And now we have funding for infrastructure from the federal and the state level. And we have deferred housing demand, as many as 200,000 housing units behind demand. And that's a real simple formula. You take population and you divide it by 2.4 people per household, we're 200,000 behind.
Is that permanent housing or temporary, or rental housing?
That is 200,000 units would be all kinds of housing. So you could fill that with single family, or you could fill that with rental. But I'm just talking 200,000 units in total. Wow. And so the market will decide over time, are people's behavior renting or buying, but it's 200,000 units, which gives pressure. And then, we may talk about this more, but certainly in the rental market in the Denver metro, after everything we've built, the vacancy rate is 3.7%. So we're full. That's structurally full. So that's why we see more cranes in the air and more multifamily going up, because there's still continued demand.
Yeah, I think your next slide kind of paints that picture.
Yeah, so you see a little bit of a drop. This is net in migration over time. You see a drop during the pandemic. That happened around the country. People just kind of took a pause. But the state demographer's office is saying, despite our housing costs, which are one of the highest that aren't on a coast in the country, we're going to see an acceleration again in net immigration. Much of that is the international immigration is going to turn back on. And these are, licensed people that are engineers and professors and doctors and lawyers. So we're going to see a growth in immigration again, and that's driving the construction demand from the previous slide. So to me, this slide tells the whole story. Until people stop moving here and coming in, we're going to have a demand for construction.
And the recent numbers tell us that that's not happening anytime soon.
Correct. But we've been high cost for years, but where else do they have to go? Austin, that's high cost too. And there's no room at the end there. So that's why Salt Lake is doing better. But there's not a lot of great options. Denver's still a great option because of the quality of life. That's what we're hearing from the 25 to 34-year-olds coming in.
So you obviously spend, a lot of your time on Capitol Hill, and I think I've got these slides out of order, so we'll just skip to this slide here. This is some of the work that you guys are doing as the AGC, correct?
Yeah, we can come back to this one, I think, a little bit later. If we go, I do spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill. So if you go to the slide that talks about advocacy thoughts, I'd actually, that would be a great. So here's the message I want to give you. Right now, actually, the voter makeup in Colorado as a whole is actually 29% Democrat, 26%. Well, actually now it's 25% Republican, and it's up to 46% unaffiliated. And the unaffiliateds traditionally have voted 2/3 Democrat and 1/3 Republican. So AGC is not a political organization, but it's my job to read the tea leaves, if you will. And so the net result is Colorado is going to continue to trend blue. And that means that party favors more regulation at the state and local level. So you've digested a lot of employment law for your company, by the way. So that's one part. But the other part, which I think is more important, is you're going to see more green policy. and you're going to see more support for workforce. And it's our job to get our share of that, help solve that workforce problem. But that's really the trend, is that the policy towards greenhouse gas emissions, the policy towards electrification of buildings is going to continue. And I could talk about the details of that all day long, but just for this question, at least, that's what we see is a continued trend there based on the electorate. And if you look at Boulder and Denver, it's even more pronounced. So that's why you're seeing Denver and Boulder lead the way with things like Energize Denver, but the rest of the state is catching up. And depending on what you want to talk about, I could tell you about some
I guess
policies.
On that note, you and I discussed this over the phone the other day, but what do you see as the headwinds there? Obviously, you could go in 1,000 different directions here, but we're getting phone calls all the time about electrification, getting rid of natural gas. I think that's probably a lingering question for a lot of the people on this, tuning into this presentation. Like, what does the AGC see as the impacts of all this new, you could call it green movement or, new legislation?
Yes. So a couple of things. So I just finished a year stint on the state's building performance task force that developed the standards that 9,000 buildings that are 50,000 square feet or more, existing buildings, are going to have to meet targets by 2026 and 2030. 7% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2026 and 20% by 2030. And they're going to use site EUI as the measurement, using Energy Star's portfolio manager as the reporting tool. All 9,000 of those buildings are paying a fee today to the state for the privilege of reporting their performance. And by 2026, they're going to have this reduction. And much of it is going to come from electrification of heating and cooling systems. Obviously, building skins and other things can be used, but there's different expense factors and different ways to get there. So we're going to continue to see the demand for electric systems. Same thing with Energize Denver. In the city of County Denver, that's going to cover pretty much all buildings over time, residential and commercial. And then a bill that was passed in this session this year would make all cities go to the 2021 building code and energy code by 2025 or 2026. So then you're going to see the rest of the state catch up. So that's what you're going to be involved in, is helping your customers make that switch for new builds, but also for existing buildings. Absolutely. And so that's what's coming there. So what's next for workforce is to start to put those type of activities into the training. And so that's number one. Number two, apprenticeship is going to be a big deal. The employment base is going to have to participate in formal registered apprenticeship more and more, because those blue politicians are favoring labor unions like apprenticeship. So they're not going to have to become union per se, but they're going to at least have to participate in an open shop apprenticeship program. And so then on the federal level, there's project labor agreements and other things that are being added in. So that's things to be thinking about, is more employees, but where they come from and what kind of training programs they have to be in, and then just the skills needed to do that green building. And so, and then I put a little bit in there about our Construction Education Foundation, and we're retooling a 27,000 square foot building for new apprenticeship programs that can serve these things I've talked about, as well as a green building for high school students that we're going to be broadcasting out around the state. So that's some of the things that are coming up next.
And I do apologize. We had you had a couple other slides, another slide here kind of discussing.
Oh, well, I just want to make sure, probably that people know that we're in 47 high schools now with a Careers in Construction Colorado high school construction trades program. We partner with the Home Builders Association, and we use the Home Builders Institute curriculum. And there's a way that you can plug into that. If you go to our foundation website, cefcolorado.org, or our retail name, buildcolorado.com, they both take you to the same place. And you can learn there how to engage and plug in, do internship programs, support one or more of those high school programs. It's going to be really tough for us to get to the employment base we need, but this is a way to cut in line, if you will, get first in line and get a chance at the best and brightest students coming out of these high school programs. And you know what? We've surveyed them. The number one thing they want is for employers to come visit their class. They want to meet a real live employer that's hiring, that'll hire them for a paid internship and then bring them on after they graduate and put them in one of these apprenticeship programs. So it's a great opportunity.
Right. We kind of flips on its head. We all think about trying to pull college kids. Yeah, we need to focus on those high school students too.
Absolutely. What we're finding is that their expectations are a little bit different than a college graduate that may still know not very much about construction, but wants to be paid close to six figures right out of the gate, versus a high school student that learns kind of as they go through an apprenticeship program. We're trying to get back more to that model.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's put a bow on this. What would you want people to leave this, this presentation carrying with them? What are the challenges? What are the things we need to grow? Where do we need to grow?
Yeah, well, in the last 10 years, we've grown from 104,000 employees to 185,000. That's an 80,000 increase on a net basis. But we need to get to 220,000 employees by 2027. And we know we're right in the highest point of baby boomer retirements. So we have to get another 35,000 employees by 2027. But really on a gross basis, it's another 70,000 to make up for all those retirements. And that is a huge hill to climb. It's going to be way harder to add the next 70,000 than it was to add the 85,000 we did in the last 10 years. And we have to do it in a shorter period of time. So if you're not figuring out how to plug significantly into a workforce recruitment and training and retention effort for your company, you're going to fall behind, because that's going to be the issue is, do you have the workforce to get this done? That's what AGC's and our foundation is focusing on. And if you want to plug into that, you can.
Well, thank you, Michael. This has been a wonderful interview. If somebody wants to learn more about what the AGC is up to, what are a couple of ways that they can tune in?
Well, number one, they can come to our website, agccolorado.org, and see all of those program areas that we're involved in and committees. If you're a member, just raise your hand and say, hey, I'm interested in this committee. I'm interested in this area. If you want updates on public policy, I send out an advocacy report every Friday. So you're very well informed on what's going on. All members receive that. And then if you're not a member, raise your hand and say, hey, we're interested in getting involved. Yesterday, we had 250 people at CSU Stadium in the New Belgium end zone, by the way. It was a beautiful fall day for a general contractor showcase. So we do 300 events a year for networking, and you can plug into all of those. So just raise your hand and say you're interested on our website, and we'll get in touch with you and make it happen.
Well, Michael, thank you once again for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody on the phone. We can't do what we do without our audience, without our customers and our partners out there. So thank you so much for everybody spending a few minutes with us here this morning. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Next week, and as a reminder, obviously we got a number of people on the phone this week. Coffee break. This is a thing we've been doing since the pandemic started. Weekly event. It's a 15 to 20 minute webinar where we just disseminate a little bit of information over the course of 15 minutes, get you on your way. So I really encourage people to tune in every week. There's always a little bit of fun information. Next week we're going to be learning about Plastech fans. And again, thank you for everybody's attention and have a great day.